This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke, and in my lounge this afternoon for today's episode, and joining me are three gentlemen also located in their own houses as well. Connor Dunn tells me reliably he's in the lounge. Connor, how are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, Guy. How are you?
Yeah, not so bad, thanks. Sean Bradbury, you're with us via the connection for the first time in your dining room.
In my dining room, yeah, I'm very well. I'm really happy to be hearing your voice, to be honest, Guy. I find your voice very reassuring. I think if you were giving the government announcements around coronavirus, I'd be sound with that. If you said I had to be in lockdown for months, I'd just go with that. Very reassuring.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And to be fair, we don't want to sort of wish any ill on anyone in the government, but there have been a few positive cases, so you don't know. I might get the call at some stage. And joining us from the kitchen,
hope so.
Yeah, and joining us from the kitchen,
tested positive.
Yeah, joining us from the kitchen is Paul Gorst. Gorsty, how are you, mate?
Yeah, surviving, getting through the box sets and all that. Dusted off me PlayStation. Finding a way to get through every day, but all right, aren't we?
Is that PlayStation 2?
No, not that archaic.
No, he's got the up-to-date one. Anyway, guys, we've got a fair bit to get through today. Jurgen Klopp's been holding a Q&A, so we're going to go through a couple of the points that he's raised in that, as well as a feature that's been on the Liverpool Echo website, ones that got away, players that Liverpool were oh so close to signing, but the deals didn't quite happen, as well as perhaps throw that forward to players that maybe in the current era they have been looking at, but haven't quite been able to secure their services. Before we'll then wrap things up with talking about the latest news regarding when football may return and an enemy that are perhaps lining up with Liverpool in support ahead of football hopefully returning sooner rather than later. That's the agenda of what's to come up. And as I say, we best get into Jurgen Klopp's comments first, guys. And Gorsty, he's had some really nice things to say about the NHS, something you'd expect no less from Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, so 2 weeks on from his impassioned plea for football supporters to basically look at the stuff that matters, really. So that was delivered 2 weeks ago when it was told that the Premier League would be suspended until April the 3rd. Now it's obviously moved on till April the 30th. So Klopp has spoken publicly again for the first time today. He's given a lengthy interview to the club's official website, and there's so much good stuff in there, as you'd expect from Jurgen Klopp when you get a chance to sit down with him one-on-one. I think probably the big takeaway from it was the praise he's given to the NHS, and he said that he was showing a video from an intensive care unit in a hospital where they were all singing "You Never Walk Alone," and it just brought him to tears. He's been so full of praise for all the health workers across the country, and as you'd expect, it was all good stuff from the Liverpool manager. He also talked a little bit about the WhatsApp groups that are going on, and everyone's in there, and the group chats are non-stop. He said he loves all the stuff the players are doing on Instagram to just basically pass the time and keep everyone entertained, and he's all for it. He said he's watched the Taken 3 trilogy, probably get through a few more trilogies in the downtime over the next few weeks. And yeah, it was just good to hear from, wasn't it? Obviously, we haven't heard anything from for 2 weeks, and it was a good message.
And Sean, obviously, when this all first sort of came out, he initially came out with a statement of basically saying, stay safe to Liverpool supporters. But as Gorsty mentions there, firstly, the You'll Never Walk Alone, obviously it's the anthem of Liverpool Football Club, but it seems to be becoming almost something bigger than that as well. Liverpool, not just, obviously we're the Liverpool Echo, but not just a regional club of Liverpool, of Merseyside, of the nation, a worldwide club as we know now. And obviously, unfortunately, this pandemic is worldwide, yet it is the Liverpool anthem, You'll Never Walk Alone, that really sort of seems to be uniting behind everyone's cause to beat this disease.
Absolutely, yeah, it's resonated, hasn't it? We heard it on radio stations across Europe, even across the world, earlier this month. Obviously, I think last night when there was the 8 o'clock clap for our carers across the UK, there was lots of videos doing the rounds, especially from Liverpool, where You Never Walk Alone was being played in the background. And I think, like you say, it's that type of anthem, isn't it? It's got such a positive message, and in a time like this, it's going to be even more meaningful. But yeah, I think picking up on some of the other stuff Klopp said, he's just a master communicator, isn't he? I think it's so significant that people like him are joining the kind of chorus of telling everyone to stay safe and kind of reinforcing all the advice. You know, it's one thing for politicians to say it on the news, but people like the Liverpool boss, who's got such a platform across all the social media channels of the club, and obviously gets picked up in media across the world. It's really significant that he kind of impresses the message as well. He's done that superbly. pretty much all since the lockdown, I'd say. But yeah, there were some other nice bits and pieces. I think Gorst, he said the WhatsApp group. I think it was telling that he said everyone in Melwood's in that. Just kind of shows what he's all about and the togetherness of the club. And yeah, I love that Taken thing too. He's obviously watching Taken just in case they take the title off Liverpool and they can sort out what to do there. But yeah, some lovely stuff, and he spoke well as he always does.
Yeah, he certainly does. As you say, the point of him being a master communicator, Connor, I don't know about yourself, but obviously he's so infatuated by football that managers and the good communicators like Jurgen Klopp, they speak to supporters like politicians can't. Yes, we have the news conferences weekly, but just to hear from somebody like Jurgen Klopp, it really does sort of resonate with you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it certainly does. He's obviously a man you totally respect and you hang on his every word. And he's an incredible orator. And, sometimes he might have a bit of a waffle, but every time he speaks, he makes such an important point. And I've said this before in the podcast, but I sometimes think that Klopp has a time machine because he never, ever seems to get things wrong. He kind of goes into things with such an open mind and it seems to take a perspective that hardly anybody else has got. And, for him, as Gorst and Sean have rightly said there, for somebody like Klopp to be, giving this statement and to be putting his weight behind it, it's just so nice to see. And nothing less than you'd expect from him, really.
No, certainly not. And Gorsty, on that point there that Connor says about Jurgen Klopp sort of almost at times being like he's in a time machine and taking a stance that not many people do. You were in the room a couple of weeks ago ahead of the Atletico Madrid game when he was asked by a reporter about coming over from Madrid to cover the game. And Jurgen Klopp basically turned around and said, this isn't a football issue, this isn't a sporting issue, it's a societal issue that we need to get on top of. I'm not here to talk about the impact it's going to have on football. Obviously, he said it for the first time, I think it was after Chelsea in the FA Cup. And everybody, you seem to get a feeling, thought, oh, this is a good thing to get into him now. Like the fixture pile-up thing, it was something that he would speak a lot about. No one was quite taking it as seriously as Jurgen Klopp obviously knew it was.
Yeah, I was at Anfield actually for that pre-match press conference, and a reporter from Madrid, he was actually a South American journalist, but he worked for one of the Madrid publications, and he asked him about it, and like the person who asked him at Chelsea, who's given the short shrift, and basically he's right, isn't he? He was saying at the time, I'm only a football manager. Why am I sound bites on this worldwide pandemic being beamed across news stations and whatever else? He's not the expert on that type of stuff, so it's a little bit out of his comfort zone, if you like, and he was right to kind of fire back in the way he did. But it still remains a strange one for me that week, thinking that 3,000 fans from Madrid were allowed over to Merseyside at a time when Madrid accounted for around about half of Spain's entire coronavirus cases at the time. It's no doubt shot up since then, and I think Spain is now the fourth worst country on earth for recorded cases. Still a strange one for me. That, and Klopp's actually said today that he found it strange as well, and he found it difficult to prepare properly for that game, knowing that what was going on in the world at a time when Spain had closed all their schools and universities and were obviously preparing for the worst. They'd banned all travel to China and subsequently banned all travel from anywhere, I think. So this was only just over 2 weeks ago. So if it's strange how far this country has come since then, and you've got to question why it was allowed to go on as long as it did. But it was a very strange one. 3,000 Madrid fans coming across at a time now when you walk the streets and there's no one within, hundreds of yards.
I thought it was really interesting, actually, what Klopp said today. And he obviously made the point that he's not looking for excuses, the fact that Liverpool went out of the Champions League, and that's the main issue here. But he sort of said that Friday when they arrived to train, it wasn't a training session. It was more of a meeting about the coronavirus. It was more of a meeting about what they do next. And that is, I know he was saying, and he put it perfectly, as he often does, that he was thinking about things that he's never had to think about before in his life, let alone before a football match. So how that was allowed to go ahead when you think just literally the day after that game, all of the matches were called off and football came to a total standstill. It kind of begs belief, really, that how, as Gorst said, 3,000 Madrid fans were allowed to travel over, and Liverpool had to prepare to face Madrid as one of the epicenters of the coronavirus. It's a very strange case, really.
Yeah, certainly is. Like you say, Connor, it does just sort of, it's beggars belief, really, that UEFA did continue for obviously trans-European competition as it was. But of course, no one knew the extent of things. And as Connor said there, Sean, Jurgen Klopp was having to prepare for that Atletico Madrid game that was one of, if not one of the most important games for Liverpool in the whole season, with all of this going on in the background, and yet Liverpool played so well on the night.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a measure of him and his staff and the squad in terms of like the focus on the night. I mean, obviously we've been over this in pods, but they played absolutely superbly to a man. It was half measuring perhaps, but it was one of them, wasn't it? You couldn't really fault much of the performance and the focus in the circumstances. But yeah, I think like Connor said, things have been foisted upon Klopp and other managers, I guess. You know, every football manager and people involved in the game, they've all now got a platform, haven't they? And they're all kind of responsible for pushing the message. And yeah, it must have been very difficult for him to do internally. But to be fair, he's doing it superbly externally, and I think that's the thing that matters most.
Well, let's change tack now. We've spoken about that for now. Let's park it there. If you do want to hear or read what Jurgen Klopp has had to say during that Q&A that Gorsty mentioned before, there is plenty on the Liverpool Echo website. What he said about that Atletico Madrid game, and also his praise for NHS and other key workers. You can find it on the Liverpool Echo website, where also, you can find a feature that's been going round today on Friday afternoon of ones that got away for Liverpool Football Club, and we're going to now talk about them here. Of course, during this suspension of football, there's been plenty of transfer stories on the website, not only the Liverpool Echo, but everywhere, all sort of transfer stories going on. But this one really sort of caught my eye, guys. Ones that you guys have all individually looked back on, one transfer dealing that looked like it was going to get over the line, looked like it was going to happen, only for it to fall apart for various reasons. We'll start with you, Gorsty, and we'll look at the case of Alexis Sanchez, who in 2014, it looked as though he was nailed on to come to Liverpool, having gone so close to the Premier League title. Then, of course, Arsenal swooped in.
Yeah, so when Liverpool lost Luis Suarez in the summer of 2014, there was no ready-made replacement for him, was there? He was such a talisman for Liverpool. He scored 31 goals that season, I think. The absolute, best player in the Premier League at that time. So Liverpool were left in a little bit of a sticky situation. They got a really good fee for him from Barcelona, but it was how do you go about reinvesting that? And it looked like Alexis Sanchez was as close as you can get to a carbon copy at the time. So Liverpool went after him. I think the money was around about 40 million, was it? Something like that. And he would have been the man to just come in and just try and provide what Suarez had done the previous season. But as it turned out, he decided to choose Arsenal ahead of Liverpool, and Liverpool were left with no one to really take over that mantle. They ended up bringing in Mario Balotelli, Ricky Lambert, Daniel Sturridge was often injured, and it's the beginning of the end for Brendan Rodgers' Liverpool reign. So I think that the one who got away for me was Alexis Sanchez, because Liverpool were ready to push on after finishing second that season. They were back in the Champions League and whatever else. And losing Suarez was a huge blow, but bringing Sanchez in as a replacement would have been as close as you could have got to ideal at the time, but never turned out that way. And Liverpool took them some time to get back on an even footing after that.
Obviously, it was a summer in which we heard a lot about the infamous transfer committee, which in all respects really isn't all too different to how Liverpool operate now, with Michael Edwards obviously now having assumed a real key role. Probably wasn't quite that influential at the time, but just wondering, and obviously thinking that Luis Suarez went to Barcelona, Sanchez was a Barcelona player, Sean. If this is the kind of deal that Liverpool wouldn't let slip through their fingers now, they would ensure that actually, rather than 75 million for Suarez, it would be, say, 40 million for Suarez, with Sanchez as a bolted-on, nailed-on part of the deal to make sure that it happened. Yeah,
definitely. I think that the whole kind of dynamics of the two clubs really have shifted now, haven't they? Liverpool's position is so different on and off the pitch. On the pitch, obviously, they're European champions, world champions, and reputation is huge. And I think obviously we're going to move on to this, aren't we, and looking ahead to what could happen in terms of this summer. But any player in world football now, if Liverpool were in for them, you would imagine that they'd be right at the top of their list in terms of places they'd like to go. But yeah, like you say, I think Edwards and co, there's rarely a miss nowadays in terms of transfers, isn't there? It's pretty much hit after hit. So I think that the whole package would mean that something like that wouldn't happen. I think Gorst makes a good case as well. I think he's certainly one of the best ones. I kind of feel though at that time the whole team was kind of not disintegrating. That's maybe a bit too harsh a word, but that season felt like kind of stretched every sinew and milked everything out of the squad to try and get where they almost got. An agent, Steven Gerrard, didn't you, in his kind of quarterback role and what have you, and obviously the great attacking talents up front who kind of piece things together. But should I go ahead and rattle off my one? Or
no, you hold yours. No, we'll come back to you. No, because I want to get everyone's thoughts on everyone else's individual players, and obviously the reasoning really that was sort of put out in the end for Alexis Sanchez not coming to Liverpool was that his other half didn't want to go to Merseyside. She wanted to go to London. And madness now to really think with Jurgen Klopp at the helm, Connor, that a player would choose something so arbitrary like that to say, "Oh, that's why we're not going to a club." If any player in the world was offered Liverpool now, they wouldn't be bothered if it was Chelsea or Arsenal who wanted them. They would go there because of what's been built.
Yeah, exactly. It's just as Sean said there, to be honest, that Liverpool's position now in the transfer market in world football is totally different to the one it was at the end of 2013-14. They are obviously probably the hottest prospect to be at for any young player, any senior player playing for Klopp, playing for the European and World Champions, playing for the champions of the England elect. It's just every single thing you've got going for you for Liverpool, or for any English team that could have possibly going for them. Liverpool have got it right now. They've got the best manager in the world. They've got one of the best transfer committees. And just what you were saying there, you think of some of the deals that Edwards has pulled off, like Solanke, 20 million down to Bournemouth and things like that. It's every single time they delve into the market, either ingoings or outgoings. It's just an absolute win for Liverpool. And you just cannot see any way that something like Sanchez could ever happen again for Liverpool. It just, right now, for fans who have really got into this in the last few years, probably would beg belief that something like that could happen. A player going, "Oh, but I want to live in London. My missus wants to live in London." You've got no hope of that happening now, given the stature of Liverpool and the club and the manager and just everything about them on and off the pitch as well. So.
Yeah, well, it obviously did work out for him when he came to the Northwest anyway. But anyway, we'll leave Sanchez there. We'll move on. Sean, on to your player now. And in 2005, Liverpool went into the Champions League, obviously as reigning holders. They came up against Benfica and a certain winger who I believe, off the top of my head, did score against Liverpool. And it seemed as though in 2006 he was going to arrive at Anfield, and that is Simao.
Yeah, he's the one for me. Simao Sabrosa, Portuguese winger. Very tricky little player. Good dribbler, good crosser, good set-piece taker. Unfortunately, like you say, I think it was March 2006, Liverpool learned to their cost that he could absolutely crap one in from 35 yards, which he did at Anfield. I think there was a comedy of errors that led to him being in that position, but yeah, can't take it away from him. It's one of the best goals I can remember seeing being scored against Liverpool. But yeah, the whole situation, I think, was a bit of a mad one. Like you say, it was in the months after Istanbul. I think it was that summer, and everything looked like it was nailed on. Like he was even, there was even some suggestion he was almost bound to catch a flight to come over and seal the deal. For reports at the time suggested it was like 8, 9, 10 million, which pretty big money back then. Yeah, and I just think he had everything. He was part of those Portugal teams of a good mix of snide and skill, wasn't he? He would have fitted into that team. It was, I think, if you look back at the last couple of decades for Liverpool, obviously until now when the situation's totally different, wingers was always one of the things, wasn't it? Maybe even since Matt Manaman, that where you thought the squad had lacked someone who really had a bit of class. And yeah, I just think when you look beyond Istanbul, obviously there was the Steven Gerrard FA Cup final, there was the near miss in 2008, 2009. But I think that team that Rafa built, for me, is one of the great nearly teams, certainly in Liverpool's history, because obviously you had the other Champions League final against AC Milan that there wasn't one. You had being knocked out in the semis as well, wasn't there? And I think someone like him could have been, and I'm not going to forgive myself using this phrase, but it's the last piece of the jigsaw job, isn't it? He just, for me, he kind of had everything. And when you look at 2008, 2009, I think Albert Riera is the one player who kind of sticks out. I think he played 40 games in all competitions that season, which is bonkers, really, because I can't really remember him doing anything. But there he was as a kind of functional piece of the team. But I think if you'd had another man with star quality, so someone like Simao, I think for me that would have made all the difference. And then you would have had a threat kind of everywhere you looked, rather than relying on Gerrard, Torres, Dirk Kuyt working hard on the right. But yeah, Simao for me.
Yeah, it seemed to be sort of, as you say, 2005, 2006, and maybe even 2007. He seemed to be linked every single year. It was during the time, obviously, Portugal had wingers, Cristiano Ronaldo, Ricardo Quaresma. Simao was another one off the production line, Gorsty, and there was real excitement that this deal was going to happen.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I seem to remember Liverpool had almost done the deal, and as Sean says, it was ready to be completed with a flight. And then Benfica upped the price that they to around about 12 million. And I think it was Rick Parry at the time didn't want to go above 10. And I think if you look back over the course of Liverpool's recent history over the last 20 years or so, there's probably quite a few deals where Liverpool just refused to pay that extra few million quid. And sometimes it might have worked out for them on principle. Sometimes it's been to their cost. Cristiano Ronaldo was probably the most notable example of that in 2003 when Manchester United come in and paid the 12 million and Liverpool weren't prepared to go above around about 8 from Sporting Lisbon. Simao, as Sean mentioned, Simao was certainly one that come back to bite Liverpool on the backside.
Yeah, and Connor, it was one of those where without Simao, Liverpool had to make do a year or so later with Marc Gonzalez. Didn't quite work out for him, did it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as Sean said, it was one of those missing pieces, and I think that 2008-2019 was probably one of the best, apart from now, in my living Liverpool memory as a complete team. And you think they went so close. Obviously, they were coming up against that United team that's probably one of the best sides they've ever had as well. But yeah, you just felt if Liverpool just had that little bit more, they would have gone that little bit further. But I thought, Sean, you put it absolutely perfectly on Twitter earlier, and I'm going to steal this because I'm still wondering what time Simao's plane is landing at the JLA. It just seemed to be just on the cusp of happening all the time, didn't it? I remember it so well.
Yeah, but imagine that now as well. Like everyone loves Flight Radar, don't they? Like tracking a flight when a new signing's coming in. I think that would crash that website now if that happened again.
Yeah, certainly is the case. And as you say, I have seen people. Obviously, unfortunately, I've not been one of those who's been on those flight websites waiting for a player's flight to land. But Connor, we'll go with your one, and yours is a man who, in the end, went down the M62 to Manchester United and became a Premier League legend.
Yeah, I mean, Sean and Gorst have really painted the picture for me really well here, to be honest. My player is Nemanja Vidic. Liverpool had a chance to sign him 2006, about 8 months after the Champions League win in Istanbul. He was 24 at the time. Spartak Moscow looked like a really serious prospect, and Rafa was on the phone to him, basically about to sign. Man United swooped in, pinched him for £7 million. And all his travails that we've talked about against Fernando Torres aside, he was an absolutely sensational centre-back. I know obviously Liverpool went on to get Agger, went on to get Skirtle, but Vidic at the time would have come in and replaced Hyypiä. And you know what he went on to do and what a defender he went on to be, and his stats and everything, when you look back, it's just sensational. And you think that 08-09 team, although he did have a really solid defence, somebody like Vidic in the heart of it would have just been another one of those you think, what an extra level of quality he would have given. And again, just Liverpool not quite moving quickly enough, in similar vein to Ronaldo. With Vidic, they just didn't get him. And yeah, that one for me was a tricky one because obviously, as I said, Liverpool got some really decent options at centre-back, like Agger's cultured left foot, brilliant in defence, Skirtle, hard in tackle, good pairings, Carragher there as well, evergreen. But you just feel like Vidic was just that extra bit, and I think we would have done at Liverpool well there.
Tongue firmly in cheek here, Gorsty, as I ask that, and Connor referenced it, we know so well Nemanja Vidic's battles with Fernando Torres. Confidence, such a big thing for defenders. Had that been on the training ground at Melwood every week, would Vidic have become the player he did become?
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I mean, I can see where Connor's coming from. But Nemanja Vidic, he would have really toughened up that Liverpool back line. But Liverpool were good, really good defensively under Rafa Benitez. Let's not pretend that they weren't. But had they had him, he would have come in for 5 or 6 years and been a really top level centre half, playing alongside whoever really. So he was certainly one who got away for Liverpool from a defensive point of view. It was only really when he brought in Virgil van Dijk, wasn't it, that you sort of realised that this is what a top centre-half looks like, because for years Liverpool had bought players who were maybe a level short of what was required. Thinking of maybe someone like Dejan Lovren, Martin Skrtel was certainly in that bracket. Daniel Agger was often injured. So yeah, I mean, Vidic was top class, and if you ask any Manchester United fan how good he was, they'll probably spend the next 20 minutes telling you.
It's enjoyable to go through these, and whilst it is a bit painful to sort of think of the players that Liverpool could have signed, it is interesting the ones that have got away. There are a couple more on sort of the article on the Echo website that we might as well go through, and the biggest name of the lot, albeit perhaps past his best years, Theo Squire's mentioning, and you spoke about a Portuguese winger before, Sean, but Luis Figo linked with a move to Anfield.
Yeah, I saw that one from Theo. I think that's a bit of romanticism from Mr. Squires there, I think, because I think was Figo around 32, 33 at that time. I mean, to be fair, obviously, people might have scoffed when we got Gary McAllister, so it can work. But yeah, over those two, I think I'd stick with my choice of Simao, who you would have got obviously a few more years out of, but certainly wouldn't have said no to Figo at the time.
Now, Gorst, you were on with Fitzy on Poetry in Motion this week talking about Diego Maradona, and that were Liverpool actually ever interested in him? This would have been a similar one, really, when you think about it, because Luis Figo by this stage would have achieved everything in his career. Yet if he'd come to Liverpool, what are we talking, probably similar time, 2006-07, I'm not entirely sure if he would have wanted to get on board with what Rafa would have wanted from him.
Yeah, I must be honest, I don't really remember the whole Figo links. I mean, don't know how serious they were or whether they got anywhere near off the ground, so I'm not too sure. He was certainly past his best, wasn't he? He went from Barcelona to Real Madrid for 37 million in 2000, was it? So this was a good few years after his peak had gone, and an absolute legend of European football, no doubt about it. Probably up there with Eusebio and Ronaldo as Portugal's greatest ever players, but I don't really remember that being close to coming to fruition for Liverpool.
I vaguely remember something about Figo wanting to come to Liverpool, but I don't know how serious Liverpool were about getting Figo, because you think at the time he would have been, 32, 33? Wrong side of 30 anyway. And did he went to Syria and to Inter after, didn't he? Mm. So you think the style of Premier League football, the classic fast pace, the classic strength, and the Italian football being slower, yeah, he might have flourished at Inter for a couple of years, but you just don't really see how he would have particularly cut it, especially what Liverpool would have needed out of a centre midfielder around that time as well.
Yeah, definitely. And another guy to talk about, one that Kiva O'Neill brought up, is Dani Alves, who at different junctures of his career seems to have been linked with Liverpool. The deals obviously never happened, never will happen. But Connor, I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, Dani Alves having ever turned out at Anfield.
Yeah, look, we obviously know how incredible Dani Alves became as a player at right back, one of those positions that Liverpool typically had some issues with over a number of years. He would have been a wonder there. And I think the deal was looking like it was all going to happen until Liverpool decided that they would go and spend a bit more money on Dirk Kuyt. Now, depending on how you look at that, I think Dirk Kuyt was another one who embodied what it'd be to be a Liverpool player and just tried so hard every single week for Liverpool, and was probably one of the best Rafa Benitez signings. Would Alves been the same player as he was in La Liga? It's hard to say, but super, super talented and would have made a big difference to that defence, you've got to say.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're talking pre or post Jan Kronkamp, are we here, Gorsty? But that deal obviously didn't work out for Liverpool, and Dani Alves would have been such a brilliant player to have come in.
Yeah, around about the same time. Liverpool struggled for right backs for quite a while. Obviously, Benitez brought in Hosami early on. He didn't really work. Steve Finner was a very good fullback, wasn't he, for years? But Liverpool would have got Dani Alves back in 2006, was it? That would have completely transformed the way Liverpool attacked. I mean, he's still playing at a top level now, isn't he? He's been one of the finest right backs across world football for the last decade. Obviously went to Barcelona and was won 2 or 3 Champions Leagues. I think he won back-to-back UEFA Cups with Sevilla. He was fantastic, and I think that was another one where Liverpool just refused to pay the extra few £1 million. And obviously you're seeing now how influential a right back can be with Trent Alexander-Arnold every week, and he was very much in that mould and probably a pioneer of the right back position across European football over the last 20 years. It's
interesting though, before you move on to Sean, I assume, to get his thoughts on Alves, but mine, Sean's, Kiva's, all around that time of that 2006 after that Champions League, when you're thinking if Liverpool had got Alves, Simao, if they got Vidic, it would have been such an even more serious unit than they were going into the 2007 Champions League final, going into that 2008-9 season. And it's just, it's tough to talk about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And as you say there, Connor, difficult to look back and think, what could have been. One thing we don't expect will happen with Liverpool in how they operate now in the transfer window is that in 5-10 years' time we'll be sat doing one of these saying, oh, what about X, Y and Z who got away? They paid the money for Alisson, they paid the money for Virgil van Dijk, they've been getting these deals done, but that's not going to stop us here on the Blood Red podcast from talking about some that potentially we might still be talking about. And the first one I want to come to all three. You would just sort of swing round on this, starting with you, Gorsty, is Timo Werner, because these links have been going on for a long time now. And I do feel even if Liverpool, if there is concrete interest or not, if he goes anywhere other than Liverpool, you will have that question mark against him of thinking, what if? Definitely.
I think you look at Christian Pulisic at Chelsea, and he was a player who Liverpool had looked at and Klopp wanted early on. He eventually went to Chelsea for around about 60 million. Hasn't really tore up any trees there. But if Timo Werner was to go somewhere else in the Premier League and continue playing the way he is at the moment at Leipzig, then you would say, why aren't Liverpool? Why weren't they at the table for this deal? It just seems to tick every box. If the funds are there, then it should be a no-brainer.
Yeah, Sean, just wondered your thoughts on that as well in terms of Timo Werner. That, of course, he says he's one of those that people say, but where would he fit and everything? For me, you can't ever have too many good players.
No, absolutely. And I think, obviously, the situation has changed now. We don't really know what's going to happen with football's resumption. But I think this window, especially, or the coming window in the summer, there was that acute need to get forward. And obviously, we expect Shaqiri to move on. Perhaps Origi as well. That's kind of starting to be mooted. But I think the summer football that was due to be played, the Olympics and other tournaments, the Africa Cup of Nations as well. It was due already to be a disrupted season for that front three. So I think that to some extent dispelled the argument of, even if you get someone with the quality of Werner, how is he going to replace any of the existing front three? I think he would have got his chances even just based on rotation. But I think, like Gorst said, he's lit up the Bundesliga this season, and he's good enough. I think he's on that level to get in that front three. And at some stage as well, certainly don't think it would be this summer. I think this is why you try and add someone now. But Liverpool will have to be thinking about succession planning. There's absolutely no suggestion that the lads up front have peaked, or no one's dipping. They're still excellent players. Week in, week out, they're amongst the best in world football. But always think you want to be that little bit ahead of the curve, don't you, in terms of when you look to replace a player. I think your man Arsene Wenger was a kind of pioneer and master of that, and I think Liverpool in recent years they must be thinking about things like that. So yeah, I think the time would be now for someone like Werner.
Yeah, obviously Klopp and Edwards always say, don't they, that they plan 2 years ahead and they look 2 transfer windows in advance, and Werner seems to fit the bill. He's young, goal scoring record is phenomenal. He's looked good every single time you've even really heard or seen of him. And he seems like a definite Klopp player, being able to play anywhere across the front three. A lot of things make sense about him. But then just to give this perspective in terms of ones that got away, and Pulisic in particular, obviously Klopp wanted Pulisic, but in the end, Liverpool decided not to go for him. And it looks like Liverpool made the right decision. Liverpool have that transfer committee that we've spoken about, who make these decisions, who plan for succession, who put meticulous plans in place and look at players probably way beyond what we could even dream of. So although Werner might not come to Anfield, although I do have a sneaky suspicion he will, if he does go elsewhere, I have every belief that it's the right decision for Liverpool, because right now, the way Liverpool is being run, the way the transfers happen, you just can't fault them.
No, and I know this is very off-piste in terms of all of this, and it's not technically a transfer that would have to happen, but just thinking there, as Sean was talking, you were talking as well, Connor, about in terms of succession planning and thinking a couple of years down the road. Rhian Brewster is obviously a guy that we've heard and read and talked a lot about over the last few years, and I just wonder, with this suspension of football happening at this stage, of course, it seems another real setback for him, because he was doing well at Swansea, he was scoring goals, he was doing everything that had been asked of him. If he was to then come in and actually not just be a training squad member for Jurgen Klopp, but actually get minutes off the bench.
Yeah, I think he's one of a couple who's just been a victim of circumstance this season. And this was meant to be the year where he really cracked on and got some Premier League minutes under his belt and made his first team debut and all that kind of stuff. And he was actually the reason why Liverpool stayed clear of Werner 18 months or so ago, because he had that pathway in place for Brewster, and he's obviously suffered that leg break and ankle injury together, which kept him out for around about a year, I think, 13, 14 months. And he's finally got to a level where he's training with the squad and ready to step up. Liverpool haven't really been in a position to give him a chance, because virtually most of Liverpool's games this season have been fought until the very last minute. So there've been few opportunities for him to come on and get 15, 20 minutes here and there because they've needed goals or whatever. He obviously played a couple in the EFL Cup, but found it hard going there. And he went out on loan and was starting to show what he can do at Swansea. So, yeah, he's been unfortunate with this particular suspension. Hopefully, when everything's all back and running and everything's safe to do so next season, we can start to see a little bit more about what he's about, because he'll be around about 20, 21 by then. So we'll start seeing a little bit more of Rhian Brewster, hopefully.
Yeah, positively, though, what I was thinking there, it's maybe a blessing in disguise. It's no suggestion it's a good thing that he was injured, obviously, but the fact he's had to bounce back from this injury, the fact he's had to have a long layoff, the fact he's had to mentally come through this before, this break in the season obviously is a little bit disruptive to him, considering the fact he's just started to hit form and find goals. But he's done it before, and you think, the way that Klopp looks at players and the way Klopp's spoken about Brewster and his mentality and everything else, you think he just have everything in his locker just to go again without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of just these ones that got away, we'll wrap this up just here. Sean, just a couple I want to just sort of put to you that are these players that we're going to look back and think Liverpool should have made more of an effort to sign. One being a man who moved in the last January window, Bruno Fernandes. He was very much linked with Liverpool through the course of last summer. And another who may be coming up on the market is Jadon Sancho.
Yeah, well, obviously Fernandes, he's had a fantastic start at United, hasn't he? You certainly can't deny that. My inclination with him, though, and this could hugely jinx things, but he feels more of a United player than a Liverpool player to me. I think he's not necessarily a system player and a phenomenal individual talent. Clearly, I think we've seen that already, haven't we? And he's hit the ground running, which is exactly what you want from a big money signing, not least when he comes in January. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the links to him with Liverpool, I think, were quite tentative. But like you say, Guy, he was there, he was on the market, and he's moved to a rival. So, fair enough to throw him out there. But yeah, I don't know that he would necessarily fit Klopp's system. And so on that level, I'm not too concerned that Liverpool have missed out on him. But Sancho, I think he's the one. I think you often wonder, don't you, like if you were to throw like Mbappe out there, for example, I'd wonder if he came to the Premier League, would he want to then go and end up at Barca or Madrid, perhaps? Sancho, I do wonder. I know he's very young, but he's already had the experience of going to play abroad, and it feels like he will come back and have a good stint at a Premier League club. So I think almost with him more than most of the other names we've talked about, someone's going to get him. So Liverpool, at the very least, I would like to think would potentially be in the conversation and be keeping tabs on him. But obviously then it comes down to wage structures, financial budgets, all of which he would test. But yeah, I see him moving to England at some stage in the near future, and I would like Liverpool to be involved if they could be.
And then let's move on from there then back towards the football, the situation we currently find ourselves in. Obviously, football, I think it was 10 days or so ago, announced that obviously the Premier League announced that the season would be extended indefinitely. We would get a conclusion to the season. But ever since, Gorst, especially the last couple of days, I know step 3 to 5 in non-league football have decided that their seasons have now been null and void and expunged from record books. You get a feeling this might be the beginning of something, but obviously we quite clearly hope that it won't be. But it's definitely something that I'm sure you certainly will be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on it, of course. I mean, I think there's two ways to look at it, really. I think you can look at the news yesterday that the non-leagues from 3 till 6 would be basically expunged from the record, which just seems so harsh to so many clubs. Not least Vauxhall Motors, who were actually already promoted, and will have to try and do that same thing again next season. some people took that as an impending sign of it being spread across the entire football pyramid. Some people took it as a sign that because that hasn't been included, then football will reach a conclusion. I think we can only be guided by what's already happened, and the statement 8 days ago said that there would be an indefinite extension of this season, whatever happens. So that means whether the league finishes in June, July, or New Year's Day, it will finish. It will have a conclusion. There will be a winner. There will be 3 relegated, 2 promoted, 3 promoted from the Championship. So I suppose at the moment we've just got to be guided by what the football authorities are saying, and that is the very latest from them. The non-league steps 3 till 6. I mean, that is some way below the Premier League and the TV deal that's worth 9.2 billion and the 170 million pounds you get just for being promoted to the Premier League. So these are ridiculous figures, and at the end of the day, these figures will have a bearing on what happens. There's already talk that there's going to be some legal wranglings from the decision that was taken yesterday. So imagine that on a 100,000 scale extra with the Premier League, and Championship clubs unhappy, Premier League clubs unhappy. Could be a very messy situation if they were to follow suit from yesterday's decision.
Yeah, as Gorsty says there, Connor, the key difference being obviously step 3 to 6 in non-league. There are clubs that do pay their players part-time. They are obviously all part-time football clubs. The money involved, not anything like it is in the Premier League, and given there's already been this announcement that the season will be extended indefinitely, it would be some U-turn from the Premier League and even the EFL to now decide that actually football in this country won't see the conclusion of the 2019-2020 season.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as we've heard from Gorty there is huge amounts of money involved, and money talks in this game. There's the legal battles that would go on between the biggest clubs in world football. You're thinking your Man Uniteds and your Liverpools against it would be crazy. It would be absolutely carnage. So you can't really see it happening. I think the most interesting couple of things I've seen in the last couple of days, Steve Bruce was the first manager, Newcastle manager. So he spoke out, first manager in the Premier League to speak out since the lockdown. And he said that all of the managers and all the teams are reiterating the point that they want to get this season finished. And he came up with an idea that's been floated around about the festival of football, where he'd have a game on every single day of the week. Teams would be playing 2 or 3 days a week to get the season done. And then you had Man United coming out today, giving a statement to their season ticket holders and ticket holders for remaining games and saying, oh, we have a commitment to get this season finished. We want to play the Premier League, because, they're still fighting for it. So there's some really big clubs around that are supporting essentially what Liverpool would want, and that is to finish and to play this season.
Yeah, that is obviously definitely the case and the feeling. You talk about Manchester United there, and Sean, piece on the Echo that's gone down favourably indeed, that Manchester United obviously coming out and saying that they want the season to be done, almost in support of the viewpoint that Liverpool and obviously all the Reds share themselves.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing from a Liverpool fan's perspective, from anyone who follows Premier League football, I'd say, really, is that statement sums up the point of view of that kind of faction of football, if you like. I think that's one thing that's marked all discussions over the last few weeks. It seems that there was a unified view, certainly from what UEFA have said and then what Premier League clubs have said in the main, that there was this commitment to getting things done. As Gorst mentioned, the Premier League decision to kind of extend things indefinitely and kind of rewrite their own rules to a certain extent. I think, yeah, it is a real shame that the English football pyramid has been fractured and broken, and that does present itself with its own problems. But like you guys said at the beginning of this discussion, it's quite a small segment of the pyramid, isn't it? Well, there's a lot of grassroots football, but it's not, relegation and promotion at the highest levels won't be affected. I think there was a piece which I'd encourage everyone to read, written by Sam Cowell on our website yesterday, which went into the nature of the problems for these teams, like Gorst mentioned, Vauxhall Motors and others who already had things decided about their season. And yeah, I think I see it. There's 2 different strands. There's the kind of elite top flight football where there does still seem to be this unity across Europe, really. And I think if that was to be broken by a certain country or a certain league making a decision at the highest level to cancel things, I think then there'd be problems. But it doesn't. But that's not the case at the moment. And then the other side of the coin is the grassroots levels, which are going to be hugely affected. And I think it's incumbent on the bigger clubs in all the big European countries to kind of help out where they can.
Yeah. Also, Lower Breck, I think, worth a mention as well. If anyone from them is listening at all, very much an Anfield club, and they were looking as though they were on the verge of securing promotion themselves. But guys, thanks a lot for joining us. We continue to obviously do this from our own houses through technology, and appreciate you joining me for the latest podcast.
Thank you very much, mate.
No problem, mate.
Thank you.
And also like to thank you guys, the listeners and viewers, whether you're at home stuck in lockdown yourselves looking to pass the time, or if you're one of the key and essential workers, whether you're with the NHS, a delivery driver, or whatever it may be, and you're just enjoying a bit of entertainment from us here on the Blood Red podcast, it's very much appreciated. And until next time, thanks for your time and company. It's bye for now.